Good morning. It's Friday morning. End of the week for a lot of people. Not so for people in Panama. A lot of them work 6 days a week. And I thought I'd sit outside today because it's such. We're in the summer season now, so it's just beautiful. And it gets hot and dry during the day, but in the morning, mañana and noche is night. It's beautiful and cool. It's very lovely, and the flowers are coming up. It's interesting how it differs from Canada, where I came from. Temperature-wise, I'd much prefer this now. Yeah, you don't have to shovel it. It's quite beautiful. So I have a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today. Um, Transhumanism, I'm always going to tie some of this stuff back into transhumanism, but today I want to talk a little bit about dementia because you see it in the headlines everywhere. Dementia. And so when I was growing up as a younger person back in the 60s and 70s, I have to tell you, you didn't see it. And the population of people that I lived around and lived with were older people. I was adopted, so my parents adopted me when they were older, 45, I think my mom was. Um, Not a one. I don't remember a one. Not a one having dementia. Then when I started nursing back in 1984, you did, because the first placement, you do placements when you're doing your training. And at that time, it was first I went for my registered practical nurse. And we would do placements where you would go and work to learn in long-term care homes. And there were a couple of wards of people that they didn't call it so much Alzheimer's, dementia, or hardening of the arteries, which is, and I'll go through and tell you a little bit about each type. Vascular would be hardening of the arteries, vascular dementia. So it was only 2 wards, and these women had had it it was mainly women that I saw. I don't remember too many men. And then as my nursing career went on, you would see it, right? But not to the degree that I saw when I went back to working in a hospital environment. Then I saw, because that was one of my specialties, was working with people that had a diagnosis of some form of dementia, or maybe didn't and needed to have one, right? So I'm going to give you what I saw and what the increase. You'd see many people, older people and younger people, because I saw younger people, right? As young, I think the youngest was 43 that came in. That would be an atypical, but there were younger and younger and younger people coming in with this malady. And there were many, many more people with Parkinson's. As young nurse, never saw one. Never saw one. And then you saw more and more coming in, and there was always this sort of notion that because they worked with pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, that it was a neurological from poisoning from these things, which I don't doubt for a minute. I think it is poisoning. It's all poisoning. People that are on Parkinson's take an awful lot of medications, to stop those tremors. And that in the long run, they do more damage, right? So I've seen this steady and then this huge increase of people with Alzheimer's type. So maybe I'll go through the types. So dementia, umbrella term for a constellation of symptoms that point to neurological damage, right? So it is a destruction of neurons, or the signals that run through the different hormones and chemicals that run through the brain network that aren't working, or blockages, or death or atrophy of organs. So in that dementia, you have Alzheimer's type, which, by the by, can only be determined once they die, to see these abnormal proteins and tie. Like, it's just an utter destruction of the brain itself, right? So there's that, and there's certain types of behaviors that you will see with Alzheimer's type. There's also damages to the hippocampus, the memory centers, right? We have on both sides, in the temporal lobe. Right, so that language can happen, that they forget language, and most of those people start to lose years. They go back maybe 10 years, and they're back in that. So they've lost their autobiographical memory, which is a part of the hippocampus, but it's the whole brain. There are abnormal proteins that don't function properly, so the brain is not functioning. I've heard people say that it's almost like diabetes of the brain, that there's some problem with glucose metabolism, and a problem with, I would believe, in the neurons, the mitochondria, the power centers, and the nerves are dying. So we have that Alzheimer's type, then you have the vascular dementia, which would have been called hardening arteries back in the day, right? And that's just that the blood vessels, and it starts in the smaller ones, and you'll get sort of subtle behavior changes, and then you get more and more and more. So it's these blockages of the vessels in the brain. Then there's frontal temporal lobe, and that's a dandy one, and you're seeing a huge increase in this in much younger people, and it gives off an almost psychiatric flare, that they're deluded and that they're having problems with hallucinations. They're not thinking rationally. They can be unpredictable. They can become violent. They're disinhibited. Well, frontal temporal lobe has to do with the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is that human part of us, that's executive functioning, following through, being able to plan things, inhibiting behaviors, language facilities. So it's this area has become atrophied, and the temporal lobes, again, the hippocampus, right? Autobiographical memory. You cannot remember. You don't remember who you are. That's who you are. That's like a movie, a documentary of you that's stored in the subconscious. Then there's the different Parkinson's. True Parkinson's doesn't feature a problem with the mente, with their brain functioning. It's more of a motor neuron problem related to dopamine levels, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain, right? So it can cause motor. You will get tremors that start in the little fingers in the hands. You can have it throughout the body, right? But it doesn't typically have the neurological yet. It can happen further down the road, that there's memory issues, language problems. Depression and flat affect always kind of go with Parkinson's. You can kind of look. Whoever is playing President Biden, that looks to me like a Parkinsonian type. But you can also have Parkinsonian type that's called Lewy body. And Lewy body, they have the rigidity and all the other sort of the facial. There's a sort of a facial, they lack the ability to emote in their face. There's a whole motor. But then you have, again, almost like a psychiatric, but it isn't true, it isn't. It's related to destruction of different areas of the brain. And in Lewy body, you have abnormal proteins, again, like Alzheimer's, that don't unfold properly. So proteins are the building block of the neurons in the brain, right? Acetylcholine receptors, we have them on our dendrites of where the nerves come together. There are many drugs that have an anticholinergic effect that affect this acetylcholine transfer. And that, so it's right down at a neurological level with all of them, right, that you're seeing problems. So when I was 9 years in that hospital environment, I just saw a steady progression of more and more and more and more and more and more. And I kept thinking, what the hell? This is not normal, because it's not normal. This is not normal. And it's becoming more and more and more. So I really like the work of Dr. Michael Nels, and he's a German author, but he has books that are in English. The Indoctrinated Brain, he did another one too before that. Now I haven't read it, but I've read excerpts of it about Alzheimer's and what to do, right, to stave off the effects so that you don't have this problem, because I see it in the news now all the time. Dementia, how to blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, over-medication can cause demented-like, can cause memory problems. Just taking, a lot of people take Gravol at night to sleep, that'll do it. That's enough to do it. To cause like a delirium. Delirium, which is like a temporary altered state of mind, right? Also, the latest, I believe they've been doing this for a while in flu, but I believe that the vid, more and more evidence comes out of it crossing the blood-brain barrier, right? Which means it's going directly, the brain in its wondrous feature has a barrier to protect it from things going into the brain, right? And when this is altered, toxins can get in there without anything helping to flush them out. if some of these things, because most of them create sleep disturbances, it is at night when we sleep, having a good, long, restful sleep, which you can achieve with your mente, right? That the brain cleans itself. There is this release of fluids into the spaces around the cells to flush out toxins and poisons. So Dr. Nell speaks that this is a concerted effort to hollow out the brain, right? By those that maybe have an agenda towards transhumanism and technocracy, and that there has been a steady decline in the size of the hippocampus, a decrease by about, I would think now, about 41%. And it is paramount. That's where care comes from, love comes from, being able to have a memory of what's happened, that autobiographical, that you. So if you were able to hollow that out in a person and offer maybe a brain chip or an interface with a machine that could think for you, how many people would take that? Because that's what I see happening. And I'm going to give you all a tip in what I've seen, what I do to overcome this plan, agenda, to hook out 5 years. These guys are not joking, right? These technocrats, this is what they want to see happen, that we're all connected to this grid. And they are working behind the scenes and without our permission to do things to us at a level that we cannot see. We've, as humans adapt, we've come to normalize dementia. It is not normal. It is related to poisoning and many other things. Lack of social cohesion, lack of living a life that human beings are supposed to live, a lack of feeling that you have any purpose in life, poor nutrition, no exercise, believing that you're nothing, poor self-awareness, not living in the present. There's a multitude of things that you can do. Quick fix. Number one, turn the TV off and limit the time that you're on these things, because they take your focus. In the art of pseudology, they call it, which is all about TV and what it does, right? 90 seconds in, you're in alpha brainwave and your brain is being manipulated. You are being manipulated to do things that are not brain healthy. And since I believe we're in a mind war for your brain, the only way you can fight it is by strengthening that. And the foundation of that is physical, right? Is movement every day, whatever. Dance is a wonderful one, because dance also gets rid of trapped emotions, because trapped emotions hold energy. And there are people that want to forget. They don't want to remember things. So what do you think happens if you don't use that part of your brain? And as we move further and further, you can see it when I go to type something. I don't want the goddamn machine to type it for me, right? But it will. It's there. It's just dying for you to lose more of your brain power, because it's an organ. If you don't use it, you lose it, just like your body, right? Movement also helps with the movement of lymphatic fluid and blood through your system. You need to move that through the body and out, through properly functioning screening through your liver to get rid of toxins, and through your kidneys. So it works in homeostasis, but the mind is the battlefield. So you have control over that, because the amount of dementias out there, these diagnoses, umbrella terms, are not normal. It is not that there's something abnormally wrong with you. Even if you're low income, you can afford to eat better than you do, even if you just eat very simple foods with protein. I'm not for total, though I've seen, there's one guy, he's an ex-bodybuilder, he owns gyms, Eddie, I love him, wake the fuck up. And he eats complete carnivore, and he was on steroids, he did all kinds of, the supplements and all of that, and says it's all bullshit. Now, I like a little bit of carbs, because I think you need that for energy production, but we eat way too much carbs. That pyramid is basically backwards, the food pyramid. So nutrition, focus on your nutrition, focus on turning off the TV, read, because it uses that muscle of your brain. Learn a new language, learn something new, challenge the brain to do things, and get off poisoning yourself. It is poison. You are poisoning the cells. Alcohol, it's a neurotoxin. It kills brain cells. I watched it with all my friends, who, by the way, that I grew up with, are all dead now, right? I have one, she's still living, but she has memory dead. Perceived, I can see them. I've watched them come into being. Heavy smoker, heavy drinker. You cannot expect to poison yourself and not have damage done to this wonderful vessel that if you just did these very simple things every day. I'm not saying it's easy to change, it isn't, but you can. It's for you. It's for your mente, as they say down here. Right? This is freedom. Right? Take your mind back. Take control back. It is not your destiny, what they're saying. Right? And it's like 50 and 40-year-olds with diabetes because of this highly processed food, right? And not knowing how to properly feed oneself. You're getting diabetes type 2 in 10-year-olds. The diabetes is you got that sticky, sweet blood clots. So that vascular dementia. So, you know what? Keep your eye on transhumanism. We're rolling along. And everything that you're seeing, these dots all connect. You've got people that are begging for some kind of something to help them because they've trusted big pharma, big business, big CEOs, and big CEOs of those, the governments, to take care of your health. You're deadly mistaken. You are the one. You are the power. And I know you got it in you. We all do. We were born with it. And it was stolen from us because we've been programmed. That's what the ego is a bunch of programs. And you can change that anytime. Just as you can be manipulated and programmed to do things that are self-sabotaging and not in your best interest, you can actually switch that. And this is worth saving. This is your autobiographical memories, right? These wonderful brain structures that work in tandem with each other, with your heart, to give you a good life. And we can do it. We must do it. We must. We have 5 years. I think David Bowie wrote a song about that. Okay, well, that's my, I get told I'm a black pillar. No, I'm not. I see what out there, right? I see it. I've seen it. I know what they're doing. I'm onto it, right? I'm trying to get people to see what they're doing so that all you gotta do, it's a thought. Take your power back. Take your power back from the people that have no business having power over you and are doing things covertly and through deception to make you do things that aren't in your best interest. Okay? Remember, you're human, and there's an awful lot of our DNA that is asleep, and I believe that there are those that don't want that DNA. And you know how we lost that? By not using it. So how do we bring it back online? By understanding who we really are, the power that we truly have, reprogramming ourselves to see ourselves as we truly are. And that is a search, a journey, right? And anyone can do it. So pop on by to Marilyn Muir at newearthnurse.net. Take a look around. I'd love to work with people. I'd love to share some of the insights, and I do with these videos of what I see and how you can become the best that you can be, how you can stop any more destruction to this wonderful organ that you have, which is your brain, and your DNA, which is connected to everything, because we're not just these biological meat suits, these human suits. We are the consciousness that inhabit it, and we can bring that conscious to bear right in the now to create the world that we want to see, not this transhuman nightmare. Who wants that when you look into it, right? And you need to see it. You need to see it to arm yourself with your power against it. Okay, I could go on and on. I could go on and on. Have a good day. Take care.